Good morning, Jamie. Oh, I can't hear you.
Good morning, Stefan.
Good morning, Jamie.
That was me. I had mute on. I forgot. I've been sitting on for a few minutes, so I had the mute button. Anyway,
All right. Once again, boomers and Xers dealing with technology.
woo, there we go. But yeah, finally, once we get that over with, we're all good.
Yep,
And we can
we
say,
are.
how are you this morning?
I am doing all righty. I'm a little bit fuzzy. The post-COVID, still trying to get my sinuses in order and my just the routine back. So all of those things are a little bit out of sync.
Yeah.
So
I feel like I've been fighting something. Like my body feels like it's kind of like it's okay, but then, and I can't tell if it's allergies or if I've got something kind of like coming or anyway.
y-
Yeah.
yes, that's actually how I feel. I feel like, oh well, w- is it the wind? Is it just we just had a radical change in seasons here
Yeah. Us too,
from
like a 20-degree drop. Like,
yes,
yeah.
very radical. It went from 70 to 80 degree, sunny, dry, smoky days to now with forest fires still burning in the mountains to the next week, rain and snow in the mountains where these
Wow.
forest fires have been burning. And
Well,
so
that's
now
good, right? That's a good
yeah,
thing. Yeah.
yeah, forest fire season is over,
Good.
basically.
That's good. Man. Yeah.
But now it's
We,
20 degrees colder and
yeah.
rainy, and the days are getting shorter by 4 minutes a day here in Seattle.
That's the morning, like we're wearing our like winter wear. It dropped like 20 degrees just like that for the last, I guess this week, since I feel like about Sunday or Monday, you went out to walk Ernie. It's usually like 64. It was or 68, 70 on an average. And we were, kind of coming into fall, and then it was just like 50 degrees and it was really cold. Really
Y-
cold.
Yeah, that's the temperature indoors here.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. That's indoors in Vegas in the summertime. It's always so cold. I got you get used to layers for sure.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
But yeah, what else has been up? You've been recovering from COVID. You've been
Been
um
recovering from COVID. Um, Feeling also like it's a year, it's coming up on uh, I don't know I feel like it's been a year since I guess I fully realized that I was getting divorced,
yeah.
right?
Oh
It's
wow,
not,
full year.
yeah, like I just remember I think when I was in Colombia a year ago in November is when I finally just, I completely let go and realized that I was getting divorced.
This is
And so then
happening.
that, yeah, this is really happening. There's no return. And so now, and so the process, there isn't really and there, I guess there's the paperwork anniversary, was in March or May. But that's not as significant as actually the moment of really accepting and realizing and then moving, doing and then really moving forward,
Yeah. Yeah.
like investing the energy moving forward. And also I got my car, when I bought my car, there were some scratches on it. And I just, after like my car was in the shop for a month,
Oh wow.
um, getting some insurance stuff done. And that I had a kid bump me in the parking lot at the airport and stuff like that. But now I have my car back and I feel like I have a new car
That's nice.
and everything went really well. You know how things with auto shops,
Yeah, you never know.
depending on where you go or who you're dealing with in the automobile industry, it can always be a little sketchy, but these guys are wonderful and they've been in business a long time and it's a family business. And
That's so good.
they were just really good. And yesterday, I just felt grateful for how smoothly everything went and how the people that I guess I'm choosing, like years ago, I remember dealing with this auto body shop. And I just remember that I just, and the car ended up getting totaled. So we didn't work with them.
Yeah.
But I just remember them feeling really good at the time. And I thought, if I ever have anything happen on my car, I'm just going to come back to these guys.
Yeah. That's a good feeling when you have that level of trust with anything really.
Yeah. And I found out, I mean, I found out even, I met the father of the founder of the business. I realized that his wife is actually the one who's in the front office dealing with
Oh,
people, and that the son was the guy who was taking care of my car. And it was really,
that is really cool.
yeah, like, and the son was a really bright and shiny individual. So something had gone right in that, whatever went on in that family, whatever, like he was bright and shiny and he was probably in his mid 30s or so.
That's really cool to
So it was,
find people like that too, you know.
yeah, it was
Cool.
really, and the guy who was the service, the guy who managed all the claims and stuff and did all the adjusting and dealt with me, the guy who dealt with me the most, he had just gone through a fire in his home, like his home burned. And so he was under a lot of stress and he still dealt with me very, as thoroughly as he could. I understood his situation. Um, but also I found out that, and like he was wearing WSU, Washington State University gear. And I go, "Oh, are you a Coug? Did you go to Wazoo?" And he goes, "No, I just became a big fan." And like he's like a WSU, he's like my a super fan of my alma
Oh,
mater. Like he
that's
hosts
great.
giant football watching parties and stuff like that. And I just thought, wow, that's just amazing, the avenues people find for their passion, what brings them joy, right?
Right?
Because I'm not even like, I'm a fair weather fan of my alma mater. I had a right.
I've
I
never been a sports fan, so it's just yeah. I'm
Yeah,
UNLV graduate. Like I don't people are way into the games and stuff. I don't know.
yeah. I mean, the
Not my thing.
basketball games would definitely be fun to watch, but again, for me, it's like that was a long time ago, and I don't. And I learned how to drink beer. I learned how to have fun. I learned how to live on my own, and
Is that was
I
college for
got
you? That
I
was
got I got my degree. Well, the thing about college for me, I think, was that I started exercising choice in my life,
yeah.
because as a young person living at home, everything everything was prescribed, and then everything else was wide open. But because there were so many things that were prescribed, I didn't really see the horizon, right? Um, I didn't see what was out there for me.
Do you think that
And
you did immediately in college though, or is it something that's like an ongoing? I'm curious about that because like
well, I think if I if I extrapolate that experience to the rest of my life, I think it is, and this is what we're doing here, is we're constantly looking for, where's the horizon, where's the
mhm,
new horizon, what are we now seeing that we never saw before.
yeah,
And in high in growing up in New York, there was a lot of opportunity and there were a lot of things going on. And then when my family moved to the country to Eatonville, Washington, the little logging town, all of a sudden there wasn't much there,
Yeah.
right? There weren't academics. There, the sports were limited. Everything was limited. And so then nobody said, well, where do you want to go to college or what do you want to do? Nobody ever asked me that question.
I feel like
No
that was
one,
not
no.
really, yeah, a thing. I mean, some people were like, oh, like when you live in Panaca, Nevada, with a
Yeah.
graduating class of 38 students, was like the next thing you do is you either go to Cedar City, Utah, Southern Utah University, it was called at the time,
Uh-huh.
SUU, which I got a scholarship for. And I went for one, they were on the quarter system. I went for one quarter and it wasn't a fit for me. Like I felt constrained as an interesting sort of thing. I felt like I didn't fit with the culture there. I didn't belong and I couldn't find anywhere that I fit. And so I
Yes.
ended up moving down to Las Vegas. So that was like the other place. Like people either kind of went to they either joined the military, they went to Vegas, or they went to Utah. Like that's
Yeah.
pretty much that was it. Those were, and yeah, I did follow that formula, and then ultimately kind of found, yeah, I ended up working and meeting people and going to this San Francisco Bay Area after I graduated at UNLV. And it's really interesting though, but I was very like, my college life was very much about work. Like it was, I would, live in the sculpture department. I loved the sculpture department. Like I lived there. I would spend the night there. I did occasionally go out to like art openings and stuff I was really good friends with some of the grad students. So as an undergrad, I hung out with the grad students more than I hung out with my own undergrad. I wasn't real close. I don't know. I always kind of a odd peg, I guess, in the bunch. But
Yeah. I mean, for me, it was because no one said, what do you want to do?
yeah,
Where do you want to go to? What do and I saw there were in Eatonville, my graduating class was like 80 people.
yeah, so twice as big.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I mean, it was somewhere, it was definitely less than
That's still
100.
small though, like really
Yeah.
small, We have
And I was, because I came from New York where things were academically a little harder, I did manage to graduate third in my class. So I didn't
oh,
have to
that's
get
great.
up and give a speech. So that was a relief, I guess. But even at that level, no one was advising me or asking me anything.
No, what do you want to do? What do you only
And
my
so,
dad. Yeah, my dad was like, get out of here. We're
yeah, oh
done.
yeah, my dad was get out of here well before even I was close to finishing. There was a
Yeah.
get out of here moment.
Oh man. My dad was like, well, you're 18. You graduate in a month.
Yeah,
Move along. Yeah.
yeah, I'm familiar with that one.
Yeah.
So then uh, I don't know that anyone went to the University of Washington, which was considered kind of the hoity-toity um, big school. And so all of the kids from Eatonville that I knew, and even the ones in classes ahead of me, they all went to Washington State University, which is the land grant university on the east side of the state on the Idaho border. It's
Okay.
called MooU. It's called Wazoo MooU. It's got
Wazoo. I remember hearing about that one. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and it is the biggest party school. And so I moved into a dorm where I knew that other people had lived, like the legacy of other kids from Eatonville. And I started choosing classes. And again, no one, right? And because I had an aptitude for physics and math, And I had actually also thought that I don't know that I can afford college,
Mm.
so I took a test for the Navy nuclear program, so I could get go into the Navy ROTC,
Yeah.
and I tied for the highest score that the recruiter had seen, at least in the, whatever, the Pierce County, Eatonville area, which may or may not have been an accomplishment. But at any rate, the recruiter,
But it
the
still
recruiter
feels
was
like one.
after, the recruiter was after me.
You're like, we need you in here. Yeah.
And so then and the thing that sealed the deal for me in terms of just take, going to college and doing whatever it took to go there on my own was I went to the Naval Hospital in Bremerton for my physical for this Navy nuclear ROTC program, and it was the weirdest, most odd day. It was just a weird place filled with weird people
In what way? Like, talk
poking
more.
and well
Yeah.
poking and prodding, and
Very
so they
clinical.
do. An entire day of physicals, right, and psych exams,
Oh, okay. Yep.
and then I meet the psychologist, and he shows me the padded room where they keep the crazy naval
Yeah.
people, right? I mean, they literally had a padded room at the Naval Hospital in Bremerton. I'm like, this is fucked
Whoa.
up.
The stuff you hear about, but yeah.
What place has a padded room, and why are you showing this to me? And they did a blood draw. Naturally, I pass out during the blood draw, right? But and then the conversation with the psychologist ended up, it was some discussion about my dad, which was obviously never a good discussion about my dad. So that made me feel kind of like crappy, right? And then after the padded room, and I don't even know all of the other, just doctors prodding and poking, and uh, and then I drove back from Bremerton to Eatonville, and I was like, there's no fucking way I'm going into the Navy. There's no way.
No way. Yeah.
There is no way I'm going into that nut house. And then they called me back. They wanted me to come back because they thought I had a speech impediment and they thought I had scoliosis. Probably because I talked slowly or something, whatever
Yeah.
it was, they
That's so
wanted to
interesting.
re-examine me. And I'm like, nope, sorry, not ever going back to the Naval Hospital in Bremerton.
Oh, that's so funny. Yeah. Just like, so funny.
Nope.
Wow.
Nope. Keep me away from that padded room and that crazy, what system creates a place where you need people? You need padded rooms for people.
Yeah. Really. Man. That's really, oh man.
And so I piled all of my belongings into the back of my friend Jim's pickup truck, and his mom and dad and my friend Jim were in the front of the pickup truck, and I was sitting on a beanbag chair on the pile of stuff in the back of the open pickup. And they drove the 6 hours from across the mountains through the eastern Washington desert to the Idaho to Pullman. And I just sat in the back of the truck, in the open truck, in the hot breeze, going,
Just a ride
fuck,
like
fuck yeah, I'm out of here.
that.
I'm out of this joint.
Never going back.
Never. Well, I did have
Man.
to go back because for me, I had to work, right? I was
Yep.
working every summer, laboring at the Puyallup Fairgrounds, and I
What did
did
you
some.
do there at the fairgrounds?
I did everything from roofing to maintaining the buildings to I was slinging hot tar on repairing roofs with a hot tar truck. at 19 that was bursting into flames. There was no OSHA, nothing.
Yeah,
It was just super,
yeah.
everything was super dangerous. And we were teenagers doing super dangerous
Doing these
stuff.
work. Yep.
I had a 1948 Ford flatbed pickup truck, and I was the only one who could drive it because it had a non-synchro tranny, so you had to double clutch it to,
Oh,
you know,
wow.
to shift gears, and had a flathead V8 in it. It was pretty cool old truck.
Oh man. No, that's really cool experience though, you know? Like,
Yeah, it was a very yeah. I mean, I learned a lot. I've had many different blue collar um, tours of duty, I guess you could say, along the way
yeah.
from and even before then, well, no, somewhere in there, I actually did work for a real roofing company with my friend Shane because I quit college for a little bit and then went to Europe and then went back. But the thing about all of this, I think that all of these stories are that I started realizing that my life was my own and I needed to start choosing.
Yeah. And that
And
you
that
could choose, right?
yeah, yes, but the thing is the habituation is that, or the story or the feeling was that if I choose something, someone's going to say no, right?
That's
Because and I think that I've carried that I carried that in many different subtle ways a good portion of my life, right? That because the growing up was like you never asked for something that you really wanted because the chances are that there's going to be a no.
that's really interesting too, because like our work here is all about like not just asking for what you want, but more than that even, right? Like, and
Yes.
it is interesting because I've had kind of this past week has been almost an awareness in exactly that practice in an interesting way for me. And I love that that came up just now is that, you know, it's like it was almost like cultivating you not to ask because you would probably be told no, right? And so at
Because the world was limited.
yeah, and at some point you had to realize for yourself, like, wait a second, I can actually poke life, as Steve Jobs would say. I can poke life, and when I poke it, something happens, and you can change it, you can shape things. And I think, you know, it's interesting because I feel like my dad was always he was always an example of that. Yet at the same time, he applied a lot of very rigid boundaries
Yeah.
upon us, you know, like even our creativity, like it was almost like he didn't understand creativity as means to an end, sort of, right? Like he was always like, you know, if you want to do well, his idea of success was financial, right? And like at least that's what he expressed often. Yet
Yeah.
the way he lived was very free and very like on his own terms,
Y-
always.
Yeah.
And to me, that's more successful than a financial, you know, financial success. And sometimes they go hand in hand. But I guess what I'm getting at is like, I'm still not fully there at the more like I can reach out and grab it and take it and define it and maybe even remove the definition and just let openness happen with some idea of like what I want, right? But I still find myself with the same sort of rigid constraints that I think that, you know, like my dad applied these restraints, like, oh, you don't wear, I remember I had a bunch of rings on my fingers once, and he's like, you just do that for attention. I was like, no, I genuinely, I like the, you know, there's a butterfly and there's a, or whatever, you know, I had like I was like 14 at the time, you know, and then
Yeah.
when I started coloring my hair, same thing with my sister was always into like makeup and beauty stuff. Like that's always been her thing, dresses and glamorousness, you know. Elizabeth Taylor. And, you know, she was always like, that was her way of expressing herself. And we were both a little different, a little creative. And he would often shut us down on our creativity. Yet Yet, by contrast, he was like, oh, if you want to be successful, be a doctor, a lawyer, accountant, one of those things.
Yeah,
And
maybe he was hedging his own understanding and trying to get you to go in a different direction than
I think he
him.
was, I think he was. And even as an adult, right? Like I ended up in technology. And I remember him when my mom passed away, he would come to my office, and I think I was a web designer at the time, a senior web designer at UNLV. I had, been in the Bay Area, the San Francisco. I came back and I got this pretty nice job at the university. I was teaching and I was doing, so I was teaching management information systems, and I was full-time job as a web designer at UNLV. And I had a great office in the alumni center. And he would come and just sit in my office after his VA uh, therapy sessions. And
Yeah.
he'd come and he'd just sit, and he didn't say anything. He would just wait for me to get off work so we could go have dinner. But he would sit and he'd just watch. And I always felt a little like weird. Sometimes he'd bring people by with their computers. Like, my daughter works with computers. She can help you. And I was like, Dad, I'm a designer, like I
Yeah,
don't know how to fix
you're the
this
you're the
laptop that was
family
like,
you're the family IT department.
but like over time he never really understood what I did. And that might be, we've talked about this too, right? Like it's really hard to describe what you do, what I do. Like I don't know how to describe what I do. I just know that I can get things done and I'm pretty good at it usually, whatever it is.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was like over time he kind of understood, like, oh, she can sustain herself doing her own thing. It doesn't have to be a doctor or a lawyer or an accountant. It can
Mm,
be. And I think, I proved to him that I could make good money. And, that I was happy that I was actually doing something that I loved doing. And I think that was the thing that finally resonated with him. And,
mhm.
he never really understood what it was that I did, but he knew that I loved it and that I could sustain myself.
Yeah. Well, I think that psychology of can I even sustain myself, that question is still there for me because I have people around me, right? I'm still surrounded by people who are even my own, in my own family who are like they have no idea how I got here,
Yeah. Yep.
right? They don't believe or trust that anything I've done I get was a legitimate form of work, whatever that I
Yeah. Yeah.
right
Like, how are you
right.
doing
It's
this?
like how did this happen? Like you okay, so you worked in tech for a while, and then you had a high rise window cleaning company, but is that really a thing, cleaning windows? Because when you see people cleaning, when you see window cleaner, you see like a grubby guy with a bucket kind of walking the
Yeah.
sidewalk.
Right. But yeah.
But the so all of these things result in, I call it a conspiracy of belief around
Right.
us that creates limitations, and then we buy into it without a bunch of active work.
Yeah.
We buy into this conspiracy of limitation that's around us, like is the
Yes.
best way I can describe it.
I seriously like I feel like this is where I'm trying to get, and you just got there. And and I've bought into it, and I believe it to a certain degree, but I feel like I'm trying to break free of that. And yet I'm not there. And I'm very aware that I'm not there. And the role that I'm doing right now, the role that I'm doing that I'm spending a lot of time on, and I really like it. But when I look at it, I'm like, I just took like 4 steps, maybe back is the right word. Okay, so my notes from the universe today, and I'm going to just jump around for a second. It says, no one ever regrets raising the bar, Jamie. Ever, ever, ever. Scare yourself.
Yeah,
Okay. And so, like,
that's going to be the title for this episode.
it feels like no one ever regrets raising the bar. Um, and scare yourself, right? In
Mhm.
okay, so I'm looking at this role that I'm doing, which I love. I'm fumbling a little bit because there's some unfamiliar ground that I'm learning. Like fumbling is a good thing to me because I'm learning. There's some territory that I'm unfamiliar with, and I think this is an opportunity for me to grow in ways that are new and different. But at the same time, there's something about this role that feels very like this is this is so egotistical, and I know how it sounds coming out, but like part of I'm used to like I'm out there speaking and I'm out there where people know Jamie, right? Like, and I don't have that here. I'm in a world where nobody knows me. I'm not a
Mhm.
CEO of Picture This Clothing. I'm not a COO of a tech company. I'm not anything. I'm just like a regular, like kind of
Yeah.
fly under the radar, helping get stuff done kind of person. And there's an exercise in humility here for me, which I think is I need. But at the same time, I'm like, did I lower the bar instead of raise it? And I keep questioning that.
Well, um, the best in the service professions, the best people, and uh, get their job done and are totally invisible.
Yeah. And I have been very invisible in my career at times. It's like the team did this and the team, like
Mhm.
I've been that for a good deal of my career, but those experiences have given me stories to share and learnings and things to build upon. And I have those, but at the same time, like it's just funny. Like in the back of my mind, I'm like, do you know who I am? but
Yeah,
but I
you
don't
pull
mean
out
it like that. Like, it's just, but it's
you
like
pull out you pull out your Costco card and go, "Do you know who I am?" Show them your Costco
Costco
card.
card.
I'm a Costco member.
I am a member. Oh man. Yeah. No, it's like, and so I struggle with this. Um, I dance with this sort of the boundary of being a nobody, which is fine. In
Apparently, it's not fine.
But apparently it's not, right? Like it's something that I'm like you guys know that I'm like really good at this. And
They
yet I'm
don't,
trying
but
to
they
like
don't know.
do all of the things that go along with like, I am back in yesterday. Was it yesterday? Yesterday was awesome. I did a volunteer stuff yesterday. But Tuesday I was in meetings like all day and I was like, wow, this is like way back in the Zappos days. I haven't been in meetings all day for a really long time. It's a funny thing. I feel like it's such a slowing down of progress, but at the same time, I understand the purpose of them. So yeah, it's just boy, there's a lot of like humbling happening for me, which I do
Yeah.
think I need. Um, but at the same time, I don't want to be so humbled that I don't like I want to have some confidence and be like, yeah, I am really like I can do this and I can do whatever else. Like, I don't know.
Well, the thing is when you fully convince yourself of that, that you are competent, that you can do anything, that you have all kinds of choices in front of you, then you will show up with that energy, right? Because it's people believe people in the absence of, let's say, a resume, in the absence of a um, a stat sheet,
Right.
people have no way to orient themselves to you. So all you have is the energy that you project when you walk in the room. And certain
Yeah.
people, and I know this from uh, my friend Norman, he he I've talked about him a lot in the past, but he would walk into the room and he was like Jupiter, right? He was giant in every way, energetically, just the level of clarity. the way he dressed, the way he handled himself, his posture, the way he engaged people, the way he gave them attention. It was otherworldly. It was very, very high level. And so people, and because he was such a cartoon like character, right? I mean, at his largest, he was probably, I mean, he's like 6'1", 300 to 400 pounds, and always in a black suit coat and black pants, black shoes, Federico Fellini glasses, and as Santa Claus, Jerry Garcia, like beard and gray, big bushy gray hair. Like you were just thrown off balance, first of all. So you didn't really know how to judge because you couldn't just, he knew, like you couldn't just say oh, there's the fat guy because he was Jupiter. It wasn't the fat guy. It was like Jupiter in a tuxedo.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. But everything about it was energy. And so people, like, he dealt with political people like here, like during the WTO riots, the mayor was having a bad time. People in the city who knew Norman said, you need to just go hang out with the mayor because he's really bumming right now. Right.
That's,
Like people would just, because his gravity was enough
yeah.
to affect people, even though people didn't know, like, even though he was a killer in the music industry, right? Like he was the guy who played on Bachman Turner Overdrive's Taking Care of Business. He did all kinds of incredible commercial work for Chiat Day back in the 70s.
Yeah.
Um, he could mimic Thelonious Monk. He could do almost anything on a piano, and he played, but people didn't know him, but he would just show up, and he had such a strong focus and belief in who he was and his way of being that it affected everyone.
Yeah.
And so that belief, and so um, because I find I am always willing to question my own competency. And that's maybe a habituation that comes from growing up in a family where where I was always questioned, where my brother was always questioned. And I can see it in my younger brother, his own level of esteem and his own level of feeling what's possible. And he's basically been a blue collar, worked for Boeing forever, now works for the union for Boeing. I can see these things in my brother, how he was more trapped by the limitations of our childhood. And he still laments about some of these things.
Yeah.
So I guess the question for me is how do I believe in who I am, which is way beyond my resume. And my resume is varied and impressive to some people, very and confusing to others,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? That it doesn't, and so it doesn't, it's not a linear conclusion as to who I am or what I'm capable of for almost anyone. Like no one, even my closest friends, they don't they don't necessarily know me or know how I got here. And we've talked about in the past too of how even when I was a dad, I had people in my circle, and again, this is this conspiracy of limitation
Yeah.
that we have. I had people in my circle giving me advice about, and I thought, how advice, right? Like how egotistical are you as somebody who's not even a parent to be
Yeah.
giving me advice about how to be a parent?
And it's,
And
yeah.
so, and I started realizing these things of wow, I have surrounded myself with people who help me believe in my own limitations. That right,
Yeah.
they're like they are. I've put myself in situations where the feedback I'm getting is he's limited, or he's not fully informed, or he's just the hippie single dad with the kid, and it was through these experiences, and we may have talked about this too, where I got the feeling that people thought I was uninformed, right? Or that
Yeah.
I wasn't fully looking at things. And the opposite was true, that every decision in my life was very thoughtful and very personal and very intelligently derived conclusion,
Yeah.
because that's the way my whole life has operated. And it was in that period, uh, it, when I first was doing a lot of work with Norman, where he had a music project called the EG Girls, and it was way out there. It was he created a whole narrative that had started during Sherlock Holmes's time, and it was about Mycroft and eugenics and a bunch of children being created through eugenics in these orphanages that were trained to be spies. And so that was this story of these generations of orphan girls. And these
That's
girls
great.
were called the EG girls. And so four of these EG girls met each other and found out that they were all orphans and that they were all trained to be spies. And so then they formed a band. And so Norman created this whole world and
Yeah.
created this band that was called the EG Girls, and then got people in his studio and created 4 albums
Yeah.
of EG Girls music. This was like 2000 to 2003. And we were working on an encoding project that ended up as a patent, where we could encode light and sound. We could encode a data stream on a Redbook audio CD. This was way before MP3 stuff or anything. And we did it. We created a little. I mean, I didn't do it, but I put the team together,
Yeah.
and we worked on it and got a patent. And we figured out how to encode like a MIDI stream onto an audio CD, so you could control lights and stuff and have really do cool effects while you were listening to something. And we built a website for the EG Girls, and created a whole persona online. This was just so far ahead of its time.
Was it cast? Like did the casting of the EG girls happen?
There was only one woman who was singing the EG Girls parts in the studio. So in those 4 albums.
Yeah.
And Norman would keep writing the story, but then we were like, well, who likes, kids like this music, and super nerdy people really like
Yeah.
this music. And so how do we promote it, or how do we market it? And that and we decided that what if we could market this to Mensa,
Yeah.
right?
That's
Like
pretty
just
good.
go straight to the nerds.
Yeah.
And I thought, I go, okay, I'll check it out. So I checked out, like, how do you reach the Mensa audience? Well, the Mensa audience is kind of a closed group, and also around 2000 there weren't that many bulletin boards, or right, everything was kind of closed systems on the internet.
Yeah. Yeah. Still the early
And
ages of the internet.
and I was like, well, like, I have to be a member. So I thought, well, I'll take this aptitude, this
The test.
pre-test, right? Like, maybe I told that story. Have I
We've
told
talked
this story to
about
you?
Mensa
Yeah.
before. Yep.
At any rate, I took the test. I got into Mensa. I mean, I took the test and then it said you can take the proctored exam and actually go to, go to a place
Yeah.
and take these IQ tests. And a month later, I get a letter in the mail from Mensa. And I'm like, oh shit, I can't open this. Like, I got to sit and think of all the implications. Because if I'm not in, I'm not, you know,
Sure.
I, right? It's like in some way it became competitive for me. And if I'm in, well, what'll that mean? Right? It's you're in the top, whatever, 2% IQ, which is one measure, right? It's two tests, it's one measure. And so I wait till I can hang out with Norman, and then I tell him I got it. And he just started laughing. And then in that time, this all comes back again to raising the bar and who's around us. In that time, it made me very happy. And Norman was like somebody on my side, right? He was
Yeah.
like, oh, that's
Somebody who
great. Awesome.
sees, yeah.
Yeehaw. You,
You.
you got in. That's really fun. That's really cool. And then, so it was much more than just promoting the EG girls. It was actually like for the first time, I had a sanctioned societal measure of where I might fit in,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Which is at the far end of the bell curve. It's on the long tail in the IQ department. Whatever that means, it means something to a lot of people. It's not just, oh, here's the window cleaner guy who shows up,
Right.
or here's the guy who worked in tech or who sold electronic devices, or we put this patent together. Those things don't mean anything. They're so abstract to most people. But an IQ test, it has a certain meaning for people. It All of a sudden it puts people in different dimensions. And so I was people would call me up and I was in a pretty good mood. So what's up? And I go, oh, I just got into Mensa. And then the reactions, I started to see the conspiracy around me of people who thought I was dumb,
Oh, wow.
right? Of people who thought I was dumb and who thought I was uninformed, or who thought I was just some outlier, but on the other end of the bell curve,
Right.
right? Like, and so then it was like, oh my gosh, nobody really does see me. It's my job to believe in myself,
Yes.
right? It's my job, as you said, to raise the bar. It's my job to believe in myself. It's not necessarily coming from outside of me, unless I bring in people who believe in a higher bar and who believe in the let's say the unlimited, the um, parts that we have to offer. And it was quite the clarifying experience at the time. It allowed me to let go of this. And again, I'm part of the conspiracy, right? I can't blame I'm not blaming this on other people bringing me down.
Yeah.
What I'm
No, but
saying
it's just
is
an
I was
awareness.
I was in this cloud
Yeah.
of people who thought less or who measured me in different ways, that I happen to believe or accept it, right?
Yeah.
When someone gave me advice, when a person gave me advice about parenting and they weren't even a parent, I just kind of accepted it. I was confused, but I accepted it,
Yeah.
right? Like, I listened to them, I let them.
Yeah.
But what I realized is that it took me down, right?
Yes.
But I allowed it to take me down.
Yes. But it's almost okay. So have you had the experience of when things go really well, like you believe in yourself for a minute and things go like really fast. You're just like, whoa, that was amazing. And then you get stunned by the
Yes.
like progress almost. Like, so I find that that happens to me a lot. Like I'll believe in myself for a minute. Things go really well, really fast, and then I get scared, almost like paralyzed. Like, oh, and then it's almost like I hold myself back and I have to work through this process again to get through my own mental barrier. It's my own mental barrier and I'm aware of it, but I wasn't aware of it for probably the first like 30 years of my life, that that's what was happening, and it's like, I mean, you talk about like goals and plan. I remember when I was 30, and I became a partner at an animation studio and I had my first kid, and I was like, things were like going well in the, traditional sense of linear success in career and all of that. And like, but I hadn't thought bigger. It was almost like I just ran into the end of the road. And because I hadn't thought beyond there, I didn't know where to go next. And so I
Yes.
was just like, now what? And then I had to figure it out as I go. And I find that that has become more of a challenge than even, it's the thinking big enough. Like I know how to think big. I'm not well practiced in thinking bigger. And that's what I really want to embrace. And what these conversations have kind of unfolded for me is that there's bigger than you can even imagine. So let go of even the idea of big, just let go. And, but I find that I've run into these sort of constraints that they're all here, but I get paralyzed by them. It's like something really good unfolds and happens. I mean, even like go back to picture this, right? Picture this clothing. We launched it and it went viral the day it launched. Like,
Yeah.
and I was already, my coaching thing had taken off. I was earning more just by like this natural evolution of following my heart and following what's important. Over the past like 3 years, I had quit my job, this whole story, but I'd quit my job and just kind of like let things unfold. And suddenly I'm in this position where I was a COO of a tech company and I was really happy with the work I was doing. And then, I was doing all this stuff on the side, picture this being one of them, working on things that I loved and cared about and that were inspired by creativity and imagination. We launch it, it goes viral, gets a TechCrunch write-up the day that it launches, like what? And then I get scared and I withdraw and I like almost bury myself in a little hole. And then I push and I resist, right? And it's like the universe is like, but this is what you asked for. It's here. Just take it. Keep going. But then I do this and I withdraw. And so I'm trying to come out of that withdrawal, is what I feel like. I feel like that's where I'm at. And in order to do that, I've like grasped onto something that I know, something that's familiar, where I have some opportunity to grow, but the bar is still not very high, to be honest. It's not very high.
Yes. Um, yeah.
Why am I doing that? I
Well,
need
no, I'm taking it
answers.
in because feel you.
Yeah.
I feel that. And I have my own experiences just like that.
Yeah.
Maybe the way I would describe them is that when good things start happening, then my fear is that they will go to shit,
Yeah.
right?
And so you almost make
Because that's,
them.
because there was always something exploding in our household, right?
Yes. And
Right.
so it's got to happen, right? Like the other shoe's got to drop sort of mentality. But
Well, I find myself, even when I pick up my fresh car, it's like, oh, wow, I wonder when the next dent is going to happen. Right.
yeah.
Instead
And why?
of like, oh my gosh, I'm driving what is essentially a
A brand
brand
new
new
car.
shiny car that beats water and that I really enjoy.
Yeah. So
And
yeah, I mean,
so that I definitely feel that, the expansion, the contraction, the retreat, but those are just uh habituations, right? They're just things, they're just a pattern that we learned, and
yeah.
we keep breaking the pattern, but the deep parts of the pattern are something is going to break, or something's going to be too hard, or someone's going to come and put me down, or somebody is going to limit me But the only one, I mean, we are now in charge of what's limiting us.
It's all me. And that's what it's like. Okay, so now I have this awareness, right? Like now I'm like, oh crap, it's been me this whole time. Like it's always been me. But
Yeah.
now and I think I've referenced like getting out of my own way before, but now I'm trying to reframe that thinking as well, because I think that thinking in itself might be limited, right? Like I'm the one who's in my own way. Okay, well maybe I'm not. Maybe I am just out of my own way now. Now and then what happens? And so
Yes. Yes. Yeah, no, that's the Zen. You just hit yourself on the back of the head with the Zen stick, because
yeah.
that is the trick.
And
Is
in
what if I
doing that,
believe that I am unlimited?
yeah.
What if I believe that? And
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 you go.
that's the walking in the room, like Jupiter, right? Like when you feel that, you can walk in the room and you're Jupiter, you're Saturn,
Yeah.
you're just like, okay, I'm here.
Yeah.
What's up?
Yep.
Bring it.
Yeah. That's so funny. Yeah. So I mean I feel like that's so much of what I've been trying to work through, but this feels very much like progress, this conversation right now. I think just
Yeah, it
hashing it
is.
out with somebody
Well,
who gets it.
yeah, well, it is progress, because I find myself thinking, how can I do less thinking about who I am or who I'm supposed to be? How can
Yeah.
I just show up and how can I just show up in every situation and just go bring it?
Yeah. I love that. And, it's funny. So I'm going to step back in the conversation a little bit when you were talking about like the limitations that other people apply. I remember a few years ago, when it was before Picture This launched, but after I had kind of like walked away from my career, right? And I was in this sort of wedge of time where things were starting to take off with coaching and speaking, and I was having lunch with a friend who I admire greatly, who's had great career success, who I think is very successful and smart. But this person was talking about another person in their life who had decided, like, was considering quitting their job in tech to pursue another direction, and wondered if I would be willing to have lunch with this person. But then this statement came out of this wise person who I was having lunch with, that I went, but they said, what they say, I, I worry that this person might be like, taking a leap of faith, but they're going to fall on their face, because you can't just decide to do something. Like there's a way to get there. And in my mind, I was like, you can just decide. You can totally just decide, because that's been like the unfolding of most of my career is I decided I'm going to do this. And so therefore I am. And
Yes.
it's worked out for me most of the time. Like yeah, it's worked out for me. Be careful what you wish for, because it just might happen. I feel
Yes.
is the story of my life. Every time I actually let go enough to, or have the clarity to define something, the universe goes, okay, here, are you sure that's what you wanted? And then I get scared. That line of, it's always stuck with me. You can't just decide, there's a way to do that. And I thought, well, I never took that path, and here I
Yeah.
am. It's like people used to say too, when I was teaching at UNLV, I was teaching management information systems. I don't have a degree in management information systems. I was invited to teach that class by somebody I met at orientation, new employee orientation when I was at UNLV. Somebody I was having a conversation with, turns out he was the chair of the business school. He said I would have to take is it the MSAT or whatever? There's a business, I
Yeah.
don't know, to get your master's. And
Yeah.
he said I'd need to take that in order to teach. I took it, and I did great. And
Yeah.
so then I was teaching management information systems in the business school at the university without a master's degree. And but he felt that I had whatever it was that they needed, and just from
Yeah.
seriously like a 30-minute conversation. And I appreciate so much that that person saw that in me. I was 26 or 27 at the time.
Well, you showed up with the juice.
I guess so, and didn't even know
You
it. And
had the juice. It
I think
didn't like
that's,
no one needed your no one needed your resume. That's the other thing too. It's
yeah.
like no like resumes
Resumes
have
are
been pointless.
funny.
Resumes have been pointless at most of my career. I mean,
Mine too.
I've had to put them together to jump
I,
through the hoop, but in
yep.
the end, the reason people hire me is
The
not,
chemistry.
yeah, as my
There's a
friend Dean
culture.
called it, that I'm hiring you for the ecology that you
The
bring to our
ecology.
company.
I I think that there's something beautiful about that too. And I remember you and I had that conversation once because I own the URL Ecology of You. And
Oh,
I
wow. That's great.
actually it was based on some conversations we had, and I was just like, I should hold this because I feel like there's something there, and I forgot about it, honestly. But I do own that URL, Ecology of
Well,
You. We got to do something with that now, Stefan.
yeah,
Maybe that's what this becomes.
yeah, maybe we call it ecology U,
Like
ecology of you,
university,
the
YOU.
university of the university of the ecology of you.
I love it. Honestly, there's so much that you could do with you, right? There's you,
Oh,
the
yeah.
ecology of you.
Well, and look at here we are. The podcast is called Unconstrained, so we're already in the you theme, right?
We are, right?
We already have our letter
You.
U.
The
You
you is already there. Oh, how funny is this? I
That's
think
pretty funny.
when things unfold, I totally forgot about that. And
Wow, that's great. Ecology of you.
yeah,
That's
but I
really
have
cool.
YOU, right? Like so, but
Yeah.
still, it
Well, we
ties
could
in
get
so well with what we're
yeah.
doing.
Well, I'm sure ecology of the letter U is
Hmm.
available too.
It might be.
We
We
could
could
double down.
take them both. Take them both things.
We could just map
That's
them to
so
the
funny.
same route.
Oh man, what a great unfolding. Wow.
Yeah. Well, I somehow I want to acknowledge this kind of expansion contraction because I feel
Yeah.
like in my life it's been 50-50, right? Like I've just turned my eye towards something and go, I can do that.
Yes.
And so then I am selling electronic devices around a pool at a
Yeah.
resort in Las Vegas, right? And have more cash in my pocket than I've ever had in my life,
Yeah.
right? Or then I'm like, well, I don't like working in restaurants, and I see this guy hanging from a building, and I'm like, I can do that.
I can
And
do
so,
that.
and then I start my own high rise window cleaning company, and it becomes a great, when my daughter is young, it becomes a great utility in my life, and it gives me lots of freedom and cash and a lifestyle that suits me at the time. And then I'm cleaning windows on uh, a tech company where I know the guys. They wanted me to come clean their windows. A couple of the guys knew me, and uh, eventually, instead of cleaning windows, those guys hire me to do a research project, and then all of a sudden, I'm the director of business development.
That's so
Right.
funny. Yep. That's so
Right.
great.
From being on the literally on the being on the outside of the building looking in, being on the inside of the building. And then I started out doing research on the digital music industry. That was like my starter project. That was like a hoop I jumped through. I
Yeah.
did a month of research. And then all of a sudden and that was a period where we had already done while I was window cleaning, we had done our patent on this encoding technology. And that might have been something we could have incorporated into this startup called Digital Harmony.
Nice.
And then I'm in Japan meeting with Nippon Denon, Nippon Columbia. I am in Denmark meeting with TC Electronic, and Bang& Olufsen, which is like one of my favorite.
Yeah. Who doesn't love? Yeah.
Who doesn't love Bang? If you know Bang& Olufsen, you love that mid-century modern design.
Yeah.
At any rate, all of those things happened, but also there was always, in all of these situations, or in many of these situations, there was always some representation of my father's energy in these situations, in these startup companies, in the bicycle company, in the company you and I worked together, right? There was always that energy of somebody who was the kind of the fear and self-loathing, or the destructive personality,
You
and
know,
somebody who was going to run it into the ground. And then it was like, I got to get out of here. This is not,
yeah.
I can't be here. This is not the right. And so for me, the question is where do I keep expanding to where I'm seeing more and more people who want to have this conversation about raising the bar, about
Yeah.
this, that this is a spiritual journey. This is not a financial journey.
Yes.
This is not a
Oh,
material
I have so many
accomplishment
things.
journey.
Yeah.
So that's the
I have to write a couple things down.
yeah. Oh, I've been writing a few things down as well. So the question for me, the question I am asking is, how do I, and in relationships too, is where do I get the relationships where they are positive, where people are reaching for more, and where people, instead of people wanting to give each other advice, where people are catalyzing each other's expansion, which is
Yeah.
very different than giving advice,
Right.
right? It's cheerleading, but it's also asking questions that are open-ended and expansive, that can only have an expansive answer. It's looking further. It's celebrating accomplishments, standing on the accomplishments, and then looking to the horizon and saying, what looks interesting? Where do we want to go? Because we can go there. Let's go there. And then also bringing people together in this, like, where are the, um, because I don't want to be the only one, right?
Right.
This is why this is so awesome when we do this. And awesome is the appropriate word. This is wonderful because all of a sudden I'm not the only one.
And we're not the only ones, right? Like there
Yes,
are other
right.
people. And I think this is where, where I've run into kind of, I always think of like a maze, and you're like going through a maze and then you hit the like dead end and you got to go back to where it was working and try the other direction or whatever. And I think of that a lot, like the little bumper that I hit is, I know I'm not alone, but finding other people that are where I'm at, like, because I think sometimes we do need, like, this conversation today, right? Like just kind of wiggling things loose. Like I can articulate, like I keep getting kind of stuck, or I get hung up, or but articulating it helps wiggle things loose.
Yes.
And maybe you've worked through something that I'm still stuck on, or vice versa, or whatever, but like just being able to have that dialogue. But what I've run into a lot is that not a lot of the people in the circles I've been in are in that place, right? Like, so the place where I'm at, I definitely feel like there's somebody who is playing at the same level that you and I are talking right now, right? Like I do have other people in my lives that are there, but yeah, but I run into sort of the, like we're in the whirlwind of the day-to-day sort of thing. And like, so I'm trying to like navigate within that, but also keep the illumination of outside the whirlwind, right? Because there's like a day-to-day function that I feel like I need to operate within that to accomplish something bigger. I feel like I gotta dip back into this whirlwind for a minute until I find what I'm looking for. I don't know what I'm looking for, but I think it's in there. So I go back in, but while I'm in there, I'm just like starved for more of this.
Yeah.
And it's astounding how people can be in the whirlwind and not even realize that they're in the whirlwind. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah. Well, again, these spiritual dimensions, I think the thing that we need to remember is that they are exponential. So the distance between going back to just working to make a living, to pay the bills, to get the kids to school, to, have food in the fridge, that dimension is where most people are fighting, when you in these levels. And so science and spirituality, and these are exponential leaps. And so the distance is huge. The distance, like if we can put a linear measure on it, the distance is huge because these leaps in spiritual understanding are exponential. It's like like if we put them on the scale, if we put them on Hawkins scale, of um, of 0 to 1,000, most people are in the low 200s, and the kind of ideologically driven kind of angry people are all below 200, right? And most
Mhm.
of the planet was in this level of ideology or following religion and the Crusades and all of this. That's how we got all of that stuff. But then we get into these higher levels of thinking about community and doing things that are generous because I have enough. I have my basic needs met. So I think about my community. And so maybe that's at 250, 300. And then we get up into, well, now we can start thinking about the world around us. And then we start getting into science. And then, so maybe we're at 500, and then we start, 400, 500, and then we start getting into spirituality and yoga, and thinking about who was Jesus, who was Buddha, how did they operate, which is at a very high level. But those are huge distances, because for most people the distances are like most people, according to Hawkins, will only move a few points in their entire lifetime. And so what you keep calling this area where you keep dipping back into, that's an area where most people are only going to move a few points in their lifetime. And that will be radical for them. That will feel radical and incredible and um, for them. But for me, once I have seen the unlimited part of who I am, and to know that there's more, I can't be satisfied. I mean, I could be satisfied, I guess, but it would mean that I would just need to dip back in there, and I would need to get a job, and I need to, just pay the bills in the way that everybody else pays their bills, and then I would just be in this kind of zone, and
Right.
that could be all right. But because there is more, or because I believe there is more, then I think I owe it to myself to explore that. And I owe it to myself to find people who are also on that path. And then I also owe it to myself to find places where I can exercise this to the greatest benefit of people around me. If it's not my family, if it's not my neighborhood, if, beyond the community, whatever it is. So if this podcast is useful to a few people, then that's great. I think, um, anyway, I won't go into the kind of more functional direction, but what I wanted to point out is that these distances are huge, and you are taking huge leaps into very high areas of consciousness. And in some of those cases, those to maintain that very high level of consciousness sometimes means leaving behind all of this kind of low level. Like, if we're going to judge it and put it on a spectrum, it's low level ways of thinking. It is very limited ways of thinking.
Yeah.
You have to leave it all behind. So it is a leap. There are always leaps, and the further you leap, the more exponential the distance is from where we were when we were just working on having a job, taking our kids to school, and kind of. And I won't. None of that is ever a grind for me. It was because I always felt like at least I was choosing what I was doing, and I
Yeah.
did find ways to enjoy it. But it is a huge leap from there. Like, you have taken a monstrous leap that 99.9% of people aren't taking, right? And they will never see it. They will never understand it. But, and I think this is the key part, is they will feel it. That's the part that I know from being around people, and especially, my friend Durkee, who could have been a leader of a cult if he wanted to. If he
Yeah.
wanted to do that, he could have been a cult leader, and
Very charismatic.
people probably asked him to do it.
Yeah.
But he was charismatic without saying anything.
Yeah.
This is the thing, is like, he was charismatic with, like, he didn't need to say anything. Like, people felt it when he
Yeah.
walked in the room. And so that high level of operating is so distant from where most people are at. But that's what I am after, that level of peace within myself, that level of confidence in myself, and then to there's even a point where all of that goes beyond joy, right? Where the joy isn't even a necessary component of that, where it's that, like the day we talked about that day of sailing out on the lake, where
Yeah.
everything just happened, and I was of nature.
Yeah. You were nature.
But
I,
that is an exponential leap from the everyday material things that we deal with.
yeah. And yeah. And like, I want, I want to make more of that normal. I want that to be my normal, but it's still, it's different from normal right now, and I
Yeah.
think that's where I'm kind of like, okay, how do we bridge that gap?
Well, normal is unlimited. Normal is unconstrained. What everyone else is doing is not normal. It is contrived.
It is, and
Right.
it feels so slow. And like, I mean, it feels like I put on heavy boots, I'm
it,
like, I'm just gonna put my heavy shoes on today and go hang with the, and I don't mean that in a critical way. It's more an observation of like, comparison, maybe from even my own normal life that I
Yes.
had designed for myself. And stepping kind of back into this whirlwind, it is like I put on my heavy shoes to go adventuring into the whirlwind today. But
Well,
I don't know,
this
it's
is
a fascinating study for sure.
well, this is the thing also that we've talked about that you've created for your kids is because your world has been so big and unconstrained is that your kids also have that built in, right? And but then they have to go to school, right? And then
Yeah.
they have to do all these things that are the most mundane, soul crushing
Yeah,
things that
like
it's and they
that
don't have the tools necessarily to deal with it.
that TED talk that we might Zia and I watched a TED talk about education and the traditional education system and why we have such a high dropout rate and but in that he uses like what do you expect when you send a kid to a building, put them at a desk and ask them to do low level clerical work for 8 hours. Like, what do you
Exactly.
think is going to happen? And that is exactly what we're doing, right? Like we're teaching them that that's normal somehow. This is what's
Yeah.
required of us. And it's not required of us. Zia had a Halloween day yesterday and she dressed as Walter White from Breaking Bad.
I saw the photo. It was
She
great. It was
put it
awesome.
together 100% herself. But here was what was she was exhausted. I picked her up at 4:15 yesterday. So 5:30 a.m. bus drop. I picked her up at 4:15 because they had some stuff after school and I was volunteering across town. And so it just worked out. She didn't have to take the late bus. I picked her up, but she was exhausted and she was like, she goes, it was like being a character at Disneyland or a real life celebrity today. She said, everybody asked me for their picture, for a picture with me. And everybody, like even the teachers were asking. And she's like, I got a picture of the principal's name is Mr. White. She was Walter White. So, and it was so funny because like I know Mr. White very well from last year. I was in there almost every week with a kid in trouble in some way or another. And but it was great. So I'll have to share that photo with you. She just texted me the photo of Mr. White versus Mr. White.
Oh man.
But it was such a great photo. But she's like, I loved it. And she goes, the hard part now is that I have to be myself tomorrow. And I was like, she
Yeah,
loved that attention, you
but
know?
that was her. She needs to know that was her. That was
Yeah.
just her at a next level of creativity. That was her. It wasn't Walter White. It
Yeah.
was
It
just
was
like
Zia.
she hit into the meme, right? She
Yeah.
hit the meme right on the and but that was her.
And she's experienced that before, when with picture this and we were on the Harry Connick Jr. show and we were
Yeah.
on like she was in all over the
Next
internet for
next
8 months,
level.
yeah,
Yeah.
8 months of just viral, 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 back to back. And she experienced that when she was 7 years old. And then when it went away, like it went
It's
away and
yeah.
she still craved that attention. That was very much who she is that she's a very, when you described your friend as being Jupiter walking into a room, that was
Yeah.
Zia all her life. And then she gets shut down over and over in in the regular world and
Yeah,
kind of
because
told like, you're not extraordinary. Like,
yeah, yeah. Well, that again, this is the thing. You're in your home and in your family life, you're creating this kind of big world. And the world that we live in is very constrained.
it's very ordinary, but
Yeah,
it
it's
doesn't
very
have to
it's very
be.
ordinary. And your daughter is obviously, both your daughters are obviously not ordinary, and you have encouraged them to be as
Exactly who
big
they
as
are.
yeah, as
Yeah.
big as they can be. But
Yeah.
that is not, again, this is a you are setting a great spiritual foundation. Unfortunately, kids have even less support than you and I do
Yeah, in
in
especially in middle school.
in middle
Oh
school. Middle
man,
school
the
is just
worst.
very competitive, very linear, very mundane,
It
and
is.
um, and everyone is looking outside themselves for some kind of affirmation as to what is cool,
Yeah,
right? And your daughter hit on the Walter White meme, and she really killed it. I mean, I saw the photo; she killed it.
she really did. And when I
and
walked into
and so
her room, I was like, "What?" It took me by surprise. What's happening?
yeah,
There's a bald man sitting here.
that was really good.
But yeah,
But
anyway,
yeah, I mean, she needs to know that she is enough, and that the Walter White is just her greater self tapping into something that's always there. It's always there. It's just that people aren't sanctioned to think bigger. People
yeah,
just that there is a conspiracy. It is a conspiracy of limitation, and we all buy into it until we don't buy into it. And then when we don't
exactly.
buy into it, we are constantly faced with increasing levels of seeing where the limitations are, right? We're,
Right.
like you say, you're running into the another dead end in the maze, and then you go in another direction, or you're standing on the top of the hedge in the maze and looking over it and going, oh, this is just a bunch of mazes below me. I'm just going to walk on the top of the hedge.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then, oh, well, there's a mountain now that I'm on top of the hedge. I can see a
There's more.
hill. And so now I'm going to stand on the hill and see what's beyond there.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
then I see a mountain or a city, or right. And that's the way we've conducted this. But now we are at levels where we are so far above that there's not many ways to bridge it.
You know what I feel as well is that I've made this statement many times, and throughout this conversation today even, is like the ego part, right? Like worrying about how it sounds. And I think I realized that I need to worry less about how it sounds and kind of figure that out later, but like to just be okay with like, I don't know, like I worry and like, do I sound egotistical? Do I sound like I think I don't think I'm better than anyone. I think we're all capable of this, of thinking bigger and thinking more expansively, but a lot of people don't. And I don't know, like I think I need to worry less about like who cares? Either people come along for the ride or they don't, but I need to have the journey I need to have, and I need to quit holding myself back wondering how it sounds to somebody else. It's
Yeah, well, I mean, if you're worried about how it sounds to someone else, we've been recording this the whole time, right? Like there are other
yeah.
people. But I would say that even the conversation you're having with yourself about questioning yourself, that is the ego. That's your ego trying to maintain a sense of control over the situation,
Yeah, yeah.
right?
and
It's your
and
ego trying to keep comfort. It's your um whether you think you deserve more or not, or whether you believe it or not, even the discussion of whether to believe it or not is about ego, right? It's
Mhm.
like there's a point where we can let go, where I can let go even of what I think of myself and my own limitations, and then be like, how do I just be and eliminate the thinking part of it, eliminate the judging part of it, eliminate the, it's not that I am better or different or anything. It's that I am, and I want to understand who I am.
I like that.
And that doesn't preclude limiting anything or anyone else. But what it does do is it asks me to surrender all linear thinking, even these levels of, even, when we talk about these levels of consciousness and the exponential distance between all these different stages of consciousness, there's some point where all of that becomes moot and we just exist, right? At the highest level, we are of nature, everything, we are all Ernie. We are all
Ernie has a hair in his eye. I'm like, oh no. Oh, but yeah, yeah. I mean, that's the goal. That's the goal. I mean, I and like I love the awareness of I am nature. And then like yeah, letting go enough to be nature more than not is what I want.
yeah.
That's what I want. Oh man. Yeah. Did we come in for a landing just now?
I think so. We've just I think so.
Raising the bar,
Raising
catalyzing expanse.
No one ever regrets raising the bar.
Yeah, I love that. It was really good. Scare yourself. Yeah, what a
I
great.
had someone at a mattress shop tell me no one ever regrets buying the better mattress.
It's a great sales tool, right? Oh man. You
No
know,
one ever comes back into the mattress shop and says, "Gosh, I wish I would have bought the cheaper mattress."
it's as far as that, setting the bar higher, right? Like
Right,
when I did my
exactly.
little pocket guide to world domination, like in my little compass of intention, one of my things is if it seems scary, go for it, which ties into this, scare yourself concept, push the bar higher.
Yeah.
I feel like
Well, that's
yeah, I want to spend some time in that space of like, what does it mean to push the bar right now? Where I haven't really thought about that.
well, what does it mean to even let go of the bar altogether?
Exactly, like raising the bar, maybe there's no
And
there's no
and
bar.
well, and also doing it is a common trope in the self-development industry, is like, if you feel fear, dig in or go
Yeah,
there.
yep,
But you know what? There are moments where if you feel fear and there's a badger around the corner, you don't go around that corner, right?
right.
That
There's
there
a reason
fear.
for it.
Yeah, I mean, there are reasons when things are negative, and this is definitely a part of the Abraham Hicks formula. Is when something is crappy, you don't need to dig into it. You can just go in a better, different, newer, fresher direction. You can just go to where who you are is welcome,
Yeah.
without judgment, without like, oh, I hate that, or I need to figure it out, or I need to fix it, or I need to fix myself. It's just like, I can
I
just, I don't need to dig into the fear,
yeah,
because I,
okay.
I can go to something that is more interesting.
I feel okay, so I relate to that. Okay, I use that analogy of the maze and like kind of bonking into the wall. And often when I find myself kind of bonking into the wall, rather than like even spending time thinking about it, it's just like you just kind of back out and go the other way, right? And
Yes.
it's like, oh, okay, this isn't the way that I'm meant to go. So I'm gonna just move on, move along without spending too much time wondering who put this wall here, why is this here, why is this found. I've stopped doing that. I've stopped being
Yes.
frustrated with it. It's funny, is like I did a call earlier this week that was a very cool, it was based on like Enneagram personality test stuff.
Yeah.
And I find that fascinating, but I also find it um it's another framework. It's another constraint, right? Oh, you're
Yeah.
this, you fit into this framework. You're a number 7 or you're number 3 or whatever. And like, I think that there's a lot of interesting accuracies about those personality types. in the Enneagram test. I think it's really fascinating. But at the same time, I was like, in my mind, as we're like, going through different personality types and listening to who's what. And I was thinking yes, I can relate to some of these things, but I also like unconstrained, right? Like I also don't want to be tethered to that. I've had coaching clients in the past who took a Myers-Briggs in their 20s and they're so tethered to what that definition was. I am this, therefore I cannot move forward. I can't, I am
Yeah.
an introvert, therefore we've talked about these frameworks before.
Yes, we have, especially
And
the Myers-Briggs. When you're
yeah,
young, when you're young, I think that's a mistake
yeah, I do too. And
to do it.
but like, and then Enneagram, like I do think there's a fascinating, thing about it. I think it's really interesting. I think it can be a great way to have insight into certain personality types and how the lens at which some personality types view different situations. I think it's fascinating that way. But at the same time, I also am, I don't know if cautious is the right word, aware, maybe is the right word, aware of frameworks and that I
Yes.
don't necessarily want the framework attached to me.
No, the framework by its nature is limiting.
Yeah,
It it's
exactly.
just it's just limiting. No matter how big the framework is, it's still limiting because it is a framework.
Exactly. And so yeah, that's the conversation I'd love to have with the woman who conducted the workshop that we did. And it was fascinating to be a participant. It was really fascinating to see how wowed people were by it. Um yeah, at the same time, like I feel like an observer. I always feel like an observer more than a participant. And I'm okay with that. But yeah.
Well, people are wowed because their ego is getting affirmed in
I
some way or
am
another.
this. It's so me.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's wild. I didn't mean to go down a hole. I opened a whole new can of worms there.
N- Well, again, this is we're raising the bar. And so again, even that is a
We're
linear
moving the
concept.
bar. We're taking the bar away, just opening it
Yeah.
up.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love it's like the
Yeah.
Willy Wonka scene when they take the elevator at the end and they just go right through the roof. And was it Charlie in the Chocolate Factory?
Charlie
Yeah.
and the Chocolate
At
Factory.
the
Yeah.
very end, they take that glass elevator and they go through the glass ceiling and they just fly. They were just flying.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway,
Yeah.
let's do that. Let's just remove the ceiling altogether, the bar. There is
Yeah.
no top floor.
No, there's no up and no down.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly it.
It's dimensions, multiple dimensions.
Whew.
And then at some point, there is no dimension anymore. There's no time, there's no space, there's no dimension.
Just nature.
We are nature, we are all of it.
I like the catalyzing expanse that came out of that. Your words.
Uh, I don't even remember
You said that.
that.
You said that catalyzing expanse. I wrote that down because that was a big one for me. I love that. I want to perpetuate that. Well, with that, Stefan, I think we should call it because my brain is going to explode with things to things to navigate
Yeah.
here.
Well, I would just let the snow in the snow globe settle.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything to do
No,
other
it's
than
just
to accept that we got to a different place.
yeah, it was a good another really I don't know, I feel like that every week, but I think that's good. That's exactly. It's funny because it felt like a way longer distance between calls for me
Oh,
this week.
I'm sorry I lost you there for a bit.
Oh, no, it felt like a longer distance between our calls this week for me, even though we went the exact same, you know.
Yeah, it did. Yeah, the time has moved. Maybe it's the change in the season or something, but
It
it
could be,
seems
it
like
felt
time.
Yeah.
It's moving slowly.
Yeah. It was
Yeah.
stretched somehow.
Maybe we could we could sign off to our listeners and thank our one or two
Yeah.
listeners here,
Thank
and
you.
then do a little housekeeping.
That sounds good. Let's do that. We'll
All
say
right.
farewell. If for anybody
Farewell
who
and thank you
listened,
to, to those
our one
to those of
subscriber.
you listening.
Woohoo! So yeah, we got a subscriber. Welcome,
We
subscriber.
welcome and
uh yeah, and then I'll push stop here.
all right. And until next week.
Yes.